Phobias. A phobia is a type of anxiety disorder that causes an individual to experience extreme irrational fear about a situation, living creature, place, or object. When a person has a phobia, they will often shape their lives to avoid what they consider to be dangerous. The imagined threat is greater than any actual threat posed by the cause of terror. Chronophobia is characterized by the fear of the passage of time, usually because people fear that their time on Earth is limited or have trouble tracking its passing. Even though time isn't fully concrete, some may consider it a type of specific phobia, similar to how one would fear a snake or a cat. Fear of clowns or coulrophobia is one of the more common of the unusual phobias. Psychologists say this phobia may stem from children's tendency to react strongly to a face and or figure that deviates strongly from the norm. The term coulrophobia is actually only recently coined in the 1980s, and experts say it is used more on the internet than in printed form. Turnophobia is the overwhelming fear of feathers or of being tickled by a feather. The root cause may relate to ornithophobia, which is a fear of birds. Ornithophobia may affect as much as 1% of the population, with the size, big or small, flapping, and even hygiene of birds thought to be associated issues. The fear of numbers is called arithmophobia. This fear is somewhat unusual in that it encompasses a wide variety of specific phobias, including a generalized fear of all numbers and fear of specific numbers. It is also sometimes called numerophobia. Dyscytiophobia is the scientific label for an excessive and irrational fear of accidents, and for some victims, this fear can become so severe that it will significantly alter their life choices. A person suffering from this condition becomes obsessed with the idea that their actions will either cause an accident or somehow put them in harm's way, and if that happens, they feel powerless to prevent a potentially grim final outcome. Cacophobia is an overwhelming and irrational fear of ugliness. A person who suffers from this phobia is not just afraid of ugly people, they also fear any object or situation they perceive as ugly. Experts aren't sure what triggers this phobia, though, as with all phobias, it is likely caused by some traumatic event that the sufferer has come to associate with ugliness. People who have nevrocaphobia are afraid of their own stepmothers, whether as a result from a traumatic event with a stepmother or because of negative associations with any woman in this role. Children's fairy tales have not helped the image of stepmothers, experts say, since these tales often portray stepmothers as cruel, punishing, witch-like, or even murderous. Octophobia is the fear of the number 8. If you're afraid of more than one number, you have arithmophobia. In the United States, octophobia is not that common because the number 8 is not a ubiquitous symbol of bad luck, the devil, or other superstitions. Phobophobia is the fear of phobias, and more specifically of the internal sensations associated with that phobia and anxiety, which binds it closely to other anxiety disorders, especially with generalized anxiety disorders and panic attacks. The fear of knees or geniophobia is relatively rare. Like most phobias, geniophobia varies widely in severity. Some people are afraid only of seeing uncovered knees in person, while others are afraid of bare knees even on film. People with this phobia may be afraid of all knees or only their own. Some people are actually scared of kneeling. If you're a person who has an overwhelming fear of the moon, you suffer from the phobia known as selenophobia. Selenophobes also fear that the moon will trigger irrational or dangerous behaviors in other people. Selenophobia may be another phobia triggered by stories many of us heard when we were young, tales of nights with full moons that were filled with witchcraft, werewolves, and other supernatural happenings. Atelophobia is defined as the fear of not doing something right or the fear of not being good enough. In other words, it's a fear of imperfection. Etymologically, the word atelophobia is comprised of two Greek words. The prefix atelo means imperfect, and the postfix phobia means fear.